Upon pushing the button for floor 5, the lift promptly began its ascent to the intended level. This particular world was inhabited by a dozen individuals endowed with extraordinary capabilities. If he could assemble all 12 of them, he would soon be able to combine efforts to repel the assaults on the city. It appeared, according to the book, that the group of 12 was discovered through the unique power of a woman possessing the strength of a scorpion. Her name remained unmentioned in the text, yet she played a crucial role due to a distinctive tattoo she bore. This scorpion-themed woman was a formidable enforcer, known for her harsh treatment of captives. The young man keenly observed that the other girl also sported a similar mark. Reaching the designated door, he was immediately overcome with apprehension, fearing he might have made a complete error. As stated in the book, the woman harbored a strong dislike for men, necessitating extreme caution on his part. After ringing the doorbell, he waited for her to emerge. She promptly appeared before him, clad in rather inappropriate attire. Attempting to maintain a focused demeanor, the girl initiated an attempt to seduce our protagonist. Changing offered apologies for the inconvenience and endeavored to manage the situation. Touching his face, the girl invited him into the apartment. Never having encountered such a sensation before, our hero found himself feeling drawn in. Whispering into the young man's ear, she sought to persuade him that he would truly relish the experience. Mustering the resolve to confront the challenge, the young man inhaled deeply and then fled from the predicament. The woman watched the retreating boy and remarked, "There must be something wrong with him." In distress, the boy began to cast blame upon himself for the incident and attempted to sleep, hoping to erase the event from his memory. Following a night of sound sleep, a new day dawned, and Tao opened his eyes. Leaping from bed in a panic, he pleaded with his companion for a few more moments of rest. However, his steadfast friend was already gazing out the window and informed him that only a single minute remained until the impending catastrophe. Recalling the prophecy, the young man sprang from his bed to witness the celestial event involving the sun. Enraged by the sight, the young man struggled to comprehend the spectacle unfolding before him. A terrifying laser beam materialized amidst the clouds, descending directly from the heavens. The cataclysm of the world had just commenced. Instantly, the city streets began to transform into an entirely green hue. Some inhabitants found themselves unable to see due to the pervasive, dreadful green light engulfing the entire city. Certain pedestrians swiftly grasped the gravity of the situation. Upon scanning the sky, they noticed that the sun itself was entirely green. With overwhelming and brutal force, the emerald luminescence invaded all life on Earth, and now, escape from the impending doom was impossible. The enigmatic woman strolled down the street in her peculiar garments, utterly exhausted from the previous night's lack of sleep. Something captured her attention when she observed the sun was literally green. Had you ever heard that certain individuals, due to cancer-related illnesses, develop new colors in their vision? That particular shade appeared dazzlingly beautiful to the woman, who found herself unable to avert her gaze. Cascading over the earth, the color spread everywhere with an indescribable quality, and the woman yearned to experience it. Suddenly, the image of a colossal space scorpion consumed the woman's vision, emanating a malevolent aura. Her eyes became fixated on this intergalactic entity. When she regained awareness, she was prostrate on the ground, utterly bewildered by what had transpired. As she absorbed that machine-like energy, the girl suffered a terrible breakdown and ultimately collapsed on the pavement. Meanwhile, the friends stood intently observing the apocalypse unfolding before their eyes. Nevertheless, a chilling voice emerged from space, addressing all of humanity. This voice, acquiring distinct colors and originating directly from the cosmos, enveloped the entire Earth. As the unnameable form began to manifest, dire prophecies were cast upon all of mankind. It seemed the abyssal war was imminent, and this demonic entity was prepared to toy with life on Earth. Summoning the forces of the abyssal realm, a fearsome creature stood poised to unleash evil upon the planet. From that point, horrific, unspeakable beings from the abyss would materialize, hungry to spread corruption across the globe. While the monstrosity uttered its dreadful blasphemies, the girls listened with rapt attention. 999 portals would tear open, and from them, monstrous entities would emerge to assault life on Earth. It appeared that humanity might possess some chance to resist, but confronting each monster would prove exceedingly challenging. Should humanity lose this conflict, this dreadful being would consume whatever remaining life persisted on Earth. This creature was ready to torment humanity and witness the spread of corruption worldwide. After delivering the dire prophecies, the entity extended its wishes for good luck to all and unleashed a terrifying light into the sky. Concurrently with that light, the malevolent being vanished without a trace. Following the announcement, Tiao trembled with fright and nudged his companion. Indignant at what he had just witnessed, young Tao pondered if this truly marked the end of the world, as humanity seemed devoid of hope. Unsure how to respond, Changting opted for silence rather than uttering something foolish. At this juncture, the young man gathered his resolve to recall every detail he had seen in that accursed book, and if his memory served him correctly, dreadful events were on the verge of commencing. Alarmed by his friend's tone, Tiao began to question the young man. Far from there, the true global leaders convened to deliberate the future of humanity. An elder seated at the far end of the table rose and declared that Earth was about to become a mere plaything in the hands of these creatures. However, another man from the armed forces asserted the necessity of annihilating those vile beings. The situation, it seemed, was truly dire, and they were prepared to sacrifice civilians. At this moment, another man stood up and began to protest, proclaiming that they were genuinely doomed. His name was Ituyuda, and he wished to emphasize that none present truly understood the adversaries they faced. Leader Maximum Cow became exasperated by this individual's slow comprehension. At that point, Mr. Uda put forth the idea of forming a super squad to defend Earth. Gazing intently at the other participants, the older man conceded it wasn't a poor idea, but he admitted uncertainty regarding how to recruit such individuals. Indeed, people were utterly terrified of the abyssal monsters, and it was time to seek a path to peace. Everyone concurred with the statement concerning global tranquility. Elsewhere, our protagonist was acutely aware that the government would attempt to implement a super squad, but Taeto, with all his acuity, wondered how they would manage enlistment. Looking steadily at his friend, Changing declared they would have to fight to prove their worth. It seemed that in the book, the protagonist ultimately sacrificed his freedom and the opportunity to join the team. However, at this specific moment, it was not the time to jeopardize his liberty. Saving the world was paramount. Yet, his young friend still questioned how they would achieve this. In this initial phase, the young man would need to secure some form of employment to sustain himself in the coming weeks. But even his own friend couldn't comprehend this, as that was supposed to be his role. It was time to confront Changing's inebriated uncle. Upon hearing this, the young man braced himself for what he was about to face, noting that his friend was growing increasingly agitated. Tiao attempted to remind him that they were heroes, not villains. Our protagonist, it seemed, understood this perfectly, but he was resolved to seek vengeance and demonstrate bravery in his own unique way. The fools were utterly terrified that just as they managed to acquire the house, this abyssal attack would occur, and it seemed the cousin suspected that the young man was fully aware of his actions. Even with the world nearing its end, the drunkard's sole concern was savoring the present moment. A sound arose unnoticed by them. At that instant, the uncle recognized what was happening, and it was undeniably the despicable nephew. Before he could cry for help, he witnessed his son splatter against the wall. Indeed, he had just been brutally assaulted. It transpired so swiftly that he had no time to process it when he saw his nephew before him. Without twitching a muscle, Changing declared that he would be next. Realizing the boy had just committed a crime, the uncle threatened him, labeling him a murderer, to which the young man responded that he was well aware of that. Desperate and pleading for his life, the vile uncle began to invoke family ties. However, the young man appeared unmoved by any of those repugnant excuses. With all the hatred in the world, the young man screamed at his uncle, asserting that he was solely responsible for all the misfortunes that had befallen him. Drawing closer and closer to his uncle, Ting was poised to exact his ultimate revenge. Begging for clemency, the uncle implored his nephew to desist and let go of everything that had happened. Drawing his sword, the young man was prepared to put an end to it all, once and for all. But before he could finish the deed, his uncle shrieked, claiming he knew who had murdered Misan. This struck the young man like a physical blow. He had not anticipated such information. Fearing his nephew hadn't heard, the uncle clarified that he knew who had killed the boy's mother. His fury intensifying, the boy's eyes flashed as he demanded to know definitively who was responsible. Pleading for mercy, the uncle claimed it was the nephew of some chief who was driving under the influence and struck his mother. Desperate for further answers, the young man asked how that scoundrel possessed this knowledge. On one occasion, while they were drinking together, the chief had confessed it to him in confidence. At that moment, he understood why the police had never investigated his mother's death. Now that he had divulged everything, he begged for his life not to be taken. As the uncle prepared to depart, he thanked his nephew. Nevertheless, it seemed it was already too late, and he sensed something peculiar occur. In a terrible manner, changing sword pierced his chest. The strike, it seemed, was precise and lethal. Celebrating his act, the young man meticulously examined his weapon and appeared immensely proud of what he had just accomplished. However, at that precise moment, his friend arrived at his house and was startled by the scene. In his defense, the young man stated that many people would perish anyway, soon enough. Now, they needed to prepare for the ensuing 2 weeks. Donning their backpacks, they seemed ready for a new journey. Glancing at one another, they trusted they were prepared for this new challenge. Exchanging greetings, they confirmed it was time to fight. Soon, 2 weeks elapsed, and Mayo and Sakura-sama were conversing in the car. The apocalypse was drawing near, and they continued to discuss their next moves. Sam appeared somewhat uneasy about the entire situation. Staring intently at the road, they seemed to have spotted something dreadful. Their car immediately accelerated, emitting a loud noise. At that moment, we saw a tall, attractive man startled by everything unfolding. Undeterred by potential consequences, the girls promptly brought the car to a swift halt. Rapidly opening the doors, the two sprang from the vehicle and approached the mysterious, handsome man. With a smile gracing his face, the charming individual greeted them, announcing that the two had finally arrived. In a state of utter annoyance, it could only regard the man with disdain. In a moment of revelation, Sakura-sama seemed to recall something. At that point, we realized the handsome man was none other than the formerly timid Asa Teho. It seemed the acquired abilities had also altered the young man's physical appearance, rendering him more attractive. Even though this was remarkable, Sammo mentioned she had heard about it previously, yet it remained surprising. Out of absolutely nowhere, a heavy backpack materialized as if hurled into the air. Without anyone anticipating it, the substantial backpack landed on Tiao, immediately disorienting him. Even more captivating than before, the young changeling captured his friend's attention and instructed him to get into the girl's car. Before they even extended an invitation, our hero adjusted the back seat and began to enter the vehicle. All of this charm emanating from the young man continued to impress his friend. Before an awkward silence could pervade the car, the skilled driver initiated a conversation with the brave one. From what the boy understood, the third and perilous portal was slated to appear in a city park. It was then time for the four of them to proceed to that location. As the clock neared midnight, they were arriving at the site. Approaching the portal, they observed the number 3 distinctly stamped on the ground. Even knowing they would locate the spot, the girl was still frightened to confirm the young man had indeed been correct. Pleased by what he heard, the young man requested more compliments when others were present. But the truth was, the girl was not in the mood to further inflate the boy's ego. Now, it was time to set aside distractions, because in less than 30 minutes, the third portal would open. Shamelessly, the blonde friend requested to receive the next ability the portal might bestow, but he was quickly interrupted by his friend, lest he botch everything with his clumsiness. As midnight struck, it wasn't long before the portal opened, and from it emerged horrifying creatures. Fully aware of what awaited them, the young man cautioned everyone to prepare. This time, both Mayo and Sama were in a state of heightened alert. From seemingly nowhere, a malevolent and slimy entity began to take form, a truly repulsive sight. However, to Tako's surprise, the slimy creature was considerably larger than he had anticipated. Knowing his friend's poor track record, Changing urged him not to mess up. Beginning to ready himself, the guy attempted to recall the plan they had devised. This dreadful, viscous monster was far more dangerous due to its tentacles, which released lethal acid. Following their strategy, our duo decided to initiate the attack with Tato firing at one of the tentacles, allowing his friend to engage, realizing it was about to be attacked. The terrible creature grew more imposing and aggressive toward the two. Initially, the young man became nervous, finding it all too terrifying. Understanding his friend's temperament, our hero tried to encourage him. Rising even higher, the abyssal creature wasted no time and began assailing our duo. Its dreadful tentacles adopted an assertive stance against Teao and his pistol. Staring intently at the monster, the young man strove to concentrate deeply. Exerting his full focus, he fired, making it clear this attack was for the sake of world peace. His skill was remarkable, as he managed to accurately hit the tentacles, precisely as planned earlier. At that moment, it was our champion's turn to spring into action. Running immediately toward the creature, Changing leaped, shouting at the creature. The young man sprang forward in an attacking motion. His powerful and razor-sharp sword succeeded in tearing a significant piece from the foul creature. This, it seemed, was the sticky being's weak point, as it began to melt before their eyes. Gazing at the scene, the two girls asked if they had finally managed to dispatch the monster. After confirming their success, the young man tossed his weapon to Sama to complete the task. With all her might, the girl plunged the spear into that gelatinous body. However, with a sudden alarm, Tito let out a colossal scream directed at his friends. No one understood what was happening, and they all began to question each other. But before he could explain the reason for his outcry, a massive explosion erupted in their direction. Carrying Sakura-sama in his arms, our hero struggled to comprehend what was now transpiring. A deep male voice emerged, declaring the attack had been impressive. The despicable individual who appeared claimed he had intended to kill them, but this time he would permit them to escape. "This creature is mine," he shamelessly asserted. The four friends stared at the filthy man approaching the monster they had defeated. But our victorious one would not let this go unchallenged, looking with pure hatred at the bully. Irritated by the unfolding events, Changing asked how he knew about this location. Mio, sweating profusely, said the information must have leaked. However, that damn scumbag attempted to joke about the situation. More astonishing than anything was that in the book, this scenario hadn't played out this way, and it was unnerving our hero. It seemed the narrative was adapting to new times and occurrences. Unafraid to confront the boy, the bully drew closer and closer. Seeing that our hero was utterly paralyzed, the jerk taunted the young man even further. Taking a deep breath, the boy tried to remain calm in that predicament. Noticing that Changing was attempting to compose himself, the guy asked why he was doing that. Clenching his fist, the boy stated that he was preparing for the opportune moment and that he was kind. That instantly put the bully on high alert. Before he could think, our hero raised his fist and tried to attack him. However, contrary to the young man's expectation, that scoundrel managed to swiftly defend himself, which surprised him. Grinning broadly, the scumbag remarked, "It was a decent hit." At that moment, realizing it would be a formidable duel, the young man began to adjust his stance. Shouting to his friend, the duo attempted a surprise assault. Without mercy for the bully, Tiao fired countless golden bullets at the unfortunate guy. But before they could foresee it, the powerful stranger raised his hands, intercepting the bullets and successfully defending himself. Boasting about his defense, he claimed he couldn't have imagined that two children would know how to fight so skillfully. However, the guy would not let that threat go unpunished. With that, the boy shouted, infusing even more power into his shots, which emerged like fire bullets. Wearing a malicious smile, the filthy man dismissed it as no trouble. To the villain's surprise, the boy managed to direct his fiery rays toward the magic orbs the man was utilizing. Moreover, Take It Up precisely struck the arm of that arrogant scoundrel. Not having imagined he would be wounded by those kids, the stranger became utterly furious. Upon realizing he had managed to attack that scoundrel, the young man felt immense pride, but the bully wouldn't let it end that way and soon charged toward the boys. Rushing past Changing, the guy continued to run even faster. At that moment, he stopped in front of the blonde with those bright and fierce eyes. With all his might, the guy clenched his fist and immediately punched Tao in the face as he attempted to defend himself. However, the stranger's attack power was too formidable, and at that instant, the boy's body flew at high speed. Seeing his friend was injured, our hero cried out his name. Raising his fist toward the bully, Changing also clenched his hand, ready to crush that scumbag in a fight. However, he was instantly restrained by the man's hand, who quickly seized his face. Before our brave one could launch his attack, the violent stranger slammed the young man's face into the ground. For the first time, Ting encountered an enemy of his caliber, and it inflicted pain. With violet flames flickering in his eyes, the bully raised his arm to strike the boy once more. He even tried to lift his fist to defend himself, but that attack power was simply too strong. Unafraid of the repercussions, the guy managed to crush the boy's face, causing him profound agony. That pain engulfed the boy's entire body, leaving him bewildered under such an onslaught. Smiling wickedly, the villain believed this battle was already won. Without mercy to end the boy's existence, the scoundrel continued to smash his face. It seemed to be a lost fight, and the girls were extremely fearful of what would happen. Raising her weapon against the stranger, Mio attempted to defend her friend. But before she could fire, the coward delivered a terrible blow to the girl, who possessed no power. Still gripping the spear in her hands, Sakura-sama yearned to attack, but was warned not to act. Witnessing the chaos he had just unleashed in the arena, the guy began to walk toward the creature. With a slight ache in his neck, he stated that he would need to visit a hospital after that beating. However, before he reached the strange creature, he heard a voice directly behind him. That scream came from none other than our hero, who still possessed the strength to fight. To the scoundrel's astonishment, he didn't even have time to defend himself. With a mighty punch, Changting managed to catch the scumbag by surprise, sending him flying through the air, screaming in pain. His attack was so potent and forceful that the scoundrel's body continued to soar farther and farther away. Unconscious and disoriented, the stranger could only groan from the intense pain. With trembling hands, Ting could only take a deep breath, but his entire body ached. Finding strength where none seemed to remain, our brave one ran to try and assist his friend. Lifting Tao's body slowly and carefully, he began checking if everything was alright. It seemed that after all the fighting, the young man had seriously injured his fist. Arduously, he moved toward the monstrous creature to attempt to complete their mission. Before any new surprise could manifest, Sakura-sama drew her spear and finished off the creature right there. Knowing what needed to be done next, Changing immediately instructed Sama to consume the abyssal seed. Levitating quickly, the girl's body began to receive a glorious ability. Everyone continued walking to leave the place, and Mio appeared significantly injured. However, the most injured remained that despicable scumbag, who would undoubtedly think twice before interfering with our heroes again. And attempting to lift his body from the ground, the scoundrel realized he was completely broken. Yet, he still didn't quite know where he was, much less his own name. Everything in his body hurt, and it would take a long time to recover from such intense pain. Slowly getting up, the scoundrel began to regain his senses. Cursing everything and everyone, he headed toward a house. Kicking the door aggressively, he burst into the place, screaming at everyone. To our surprise, it appeared more like an evil headquarters. And there was that mysterious hottie. Another individual expresses astonishment at the strength displayed by our courageous heroes. Despite his ongoing recovery, the aggressive figure begins to inform his associates of the formidable power these youngsters possess. Nonetheless, the moment has arrived for the forces of evil to launch an offensive against our main characters. Upon recognizing their intention to align with the children, the bully voices his displeasure. Seeking to involve the other female in their discussion, he inquires about her opinion, addressing her as Iber. This remark thoroughly agitates the woman, as she has repeatedly stated her current name is Scorpiana. Upon hearing this, the bully is amused by her desire to be referred to as Scorpiana. However, before he can persist with his taunts, she unleashes a fierce assault on him. Holding her enchanted fist near his neck, Scorpiana issues a final admonition. Confident in his own capabilities, the man confronts her, prepared to eliminate her should she persist. Nevertheless, their other associate, weary of the ongoing dispute, commands them to cease their argument. It is imperative to devise a strategy to proceed with their clandestine operation. Gazing sternly at both individuals, he declares that failure to comply will result in a hellish retribution. The two immediately became vigilant, indicating their understanding of the gravity of the menace. With a faint, uneasy smile, Scorpiana requests the leader to soften his stern expression, assuring him the conflict is resolved. The bully observes the leader, stunned, as he is aware of the leader's potential to transform into a literal demon if provoked. Bringing their exchange to a close, the man states that Aberin must return in 3 days. Recognizing the authority, the young woman, who prefers the name Scorpiana, assents and pledges to fulfill the directive. Elsewhere, a magnificent hospital comes into view. It quickly becomes apparent that our heroes are present, eager for an update on Mayo's condition, as she alone lacks supernatural abilities. The physician reports that she sustained several bone fractures but will make a full recovery shortly. Addressing our beloved Tachiko, the doctor advises him to also get some rest for his arm to heal properly. Energized by the doctor's prognosis, the impetuous young man lifts his arm in celebration, only to immediately forget its injured state. A peculiar sound emanates from within the cast, suggesting considerable discomfort. Our companion silences himself, refraining from shouting to suppress the acute pain experienced in that instant. Moving towards the exit, the doctor bids farewell to our heroes, instructing them to contact him should any issues arise. Concerned about the outcome of the recent confrontation, Sakura-sama attempts to apologize to Changting, who reassures her. He believes the fight is far from over, confident in forthcoming opportunities for new powers. On this occasion, the young woman demonstrates heightened resolve and dedication to overcome obstacles and gain novel abilities. Extending the tips of her slender, seemingly innocuous fingers, Sama astonishes everyone present with her freshly acquired magical capability. Disbelieving their eyes, Tiao gazes at the girl's hands in wonder, questioning its nature. To those who assumed her power was limited to fire manipulation, she grins, indicating her abilities transcend such boundaries. Demonstrating all four elements within her palm, the girl offers a charming, playful grin. The excitable young man, once more, overflows with enthusiasm for future events. Reflecting intently on the spectacle before him, our protagonist recalls that such a feat was indeed documented in the book. To his recollection, a young woman existed who could confront any danger by harnessing the five elements. Even Sakura-sama herself is currently astonished by the extent of power and capabilities she possesses. Experimenting thoroughly with her abilities, the girl finds that combining fire and water allows her to unleash offensive maneuvers. By manifesting forest-based elements, she will gain the capacity to aid in her allies' recovery. Moreover, when applied effectively, the earth element will function as a superb defensive mechanism. Harnessing the might of metal, Sakura-sama can project potent, sharp projectiles. Exhibiting his longing, young Tao expresses a desire to possess similar powers. Aware of her newfound superhero status, the young woman states her wish to converse with Changting. Eager to hear what she has to say, the young man readily assents, declaring his full attention. Possessing what appears to be vital information, the girl discloses that the government is assembling a large squad of individuals with special talents. Following her disclosure, Sakura-sama asserts her firm intention to enlist in this new contingent of combatants and extends an invitation to the young man to accompany her. Nevertheless, as previously established, our unyielding hero harbors no interest in joining this government-affiliated group. Observing her friend's reluctance, the girl continues to press the issue, convinced of the crucial importance of his assistance. Sakura-sama believes his presence on the team would be invaluable, as his knowledge would greatly aid in strategizing attacks. Despite making Sama profoundly disheartened, Changting is unwilling to forego the opportunity to forge his own path as an independent young man. At this juncture, little more can be said as our courageous hero appears resolved to embark on a solo venture. Once the young man articulates his stance, she seemingly comprehends his perspective, yet emphasizes her unwavering support. Seizing the opportunity, the financially strapped young man mentions his need for some funds. This revelation oddly seems to gratify Sama, as her family, she claims, possesses abundant discretionary income. Perceiving her evident pride, he seizes the moment to request $1 billion, a figure that utterly mortifies Takedo. Instantly, he recognizes his overreach and opts to revise his proposition, settling for $5 million. Witnessing her friend's audacity, the girl attempts to reprimand him, urging him to show some decorum. Following her ineffective lecture, Sakura-sama confirms she possesses the funds and merely requires his account details to facilitate the transfer. Takato is almost overcome with shock, realizing the girl was genuinely serious about sending such a substantial amount. Drawing his friend away, Changting begins to take his leave, asserting he will forward the account number but must depart immediately. He apparently has pressing matters to attend to. His friend, at this juncture, becomes exasperated as once more, decisions are being made without his input or consideration. Simultaneously, Sam begins to ponder the reason behind young Changting's need for such a considerable sum. The narrative then shifts to a different scene within the hospital, far from this location. His friend recalled Ting's extensive discourse on the impending collapse of the monetary system, leading him to scrutinize the request. Ting explains that they must establish a mercenary organization which necessitates capital. At this revelation, Teko becomes immensely thrilled, reasoning that if his friend assumes the role of captain, he will naturally become the vice captain. Initially, our hero requires a period of repose in the mountains. Secondly, should circumstances demand, he will be compelled to intimidate someone. This prospect deeply troubles his friend, observing Ting's increasing resemblance to a formidable antagonist in his speech. However, the true imperative is their need to train, preparing to overcome the forthcoming abyssal seed. This statement strikes Tato as strange, prompting a momentary silence from him. Uttering a piercing shriek, the young man becomes frantic near the hospital's escalator. Elsewhere, the training academy appears. However, it is immediately evident that the two companions are sprawled on the ground, utterly exhausted from combat. A television reporter seemingly proclaims that the fate of the world rests on the power of the squad destined to confront the adversaries. News reports indicate the security department is exerting maximum effort to assemble an elite group of experts for global salvation. Despite their training fatigue, both Changting and Tiacho endeavor to converse and map out the subsequent phases of their quest. It appears little time remains before our heroes encounter one of their most significant life challenges. The young man is already envisioning that momentous day. At that instant, young Ting rises, stating that time is scarce and the day of conflict draws near. Nevertheless, before he can complete his contemplation, the young man witnesses a malevolent entity coalescing directly before him. The two companions leap towards the impending danger, aiming to shield themselves from the ferocious assault. Unleashing the full extent of her malice, the antagonist Scorpiana is resolute in obliterating our heroes with her infernal capabilities. Yet, precisely as she prepares to release her full animosity, an unforeseen event transpires. Instantly, the attractive woman recalls her encounter with Changting in the hotel corridors earlier that day. Perceiving a certain spark between them, Tito queries if his friend is acquainted with this individual. With a provocative flourish, the woman dramatically collapses, attempting to entice our protagonist by requesting water. But before his companion can act foolishly, Taido rushes to the water supply and offers a bottle to the woman. At this juncture, a highly peculiar incident occurs as the cunning Scorpiana makes physical contact with his hands. Observing his friend's weakening state, the woman interrogates him, asking if he intends to remain silent and if he has a romantic partner. Furthermore, with increasing audacity, the impudent woman escalates her taunting of the young man. At this point, the young man finds himself bewildered, unable to discern right from wrong, and is utterly frozen by the unfolding events. Losing all patience for such trivialities, Changting voices his irritation, demanding the woman reveal her intentions without delay. Before proceeding, she identifies herself as the Scorpion Woman, a member of the enigmatic mercenary collective known as the 12 Celestial Stars. "That brute who assaulted you is one of ours," she declares with a sinister smirk. Suspecting this might be a retaliatory act, Teika brandishes his weapon, menacing the cursed woman. Reassuring Ting's startled friend, the woman clarifies her genuine purpose, to present them with a proposition. To prevent Changting from jeopardizing matters, she places a finger to her lips, signaling him to remain silent. She states her captain issued explicit instructions. If he meddles excessively, she is authorized to eliminate him. Hence, his silence would be prudent. However, Tiao remains unfazed by this menace, reasoning that she is a lone individual facing two of them. Yet, precisely at that instant, a peculiar phenomenon begins to affect the young man. His head pulsates strangely, and the agony intensifies beyond endurance, causing him to fall to the floor. A dreadful enchantment manifests on the young man's form as he senses an alien, verdant energy consuming him. Ting observes the entire scene with heightened vigilance, utterly unaware of the unfolding events. Meanwhile, the young man remains prostrate before the Scorpion Woman, afflicted by a persistent and severe headache. Acknowledging her command of the circumstances, the woman begins to direct a barrage of unpleasant jests at the young man. The moment has arrived for her to receive the desired response. Nonetheless, both he and his companion are consumed by profound hopelessness. At that precise juncture, a voice reverberates from the rear of the chamber, seemingly seeking the Scorpion Woman. Subsequently, 4 new figures are introduced into our narrative, one of whom appears to be bald. Uncertain how to respond, the woman, in utter desperation, merely utters a dreadful expletive. Baffled by the situation, our protagonist seizes the chance to question the woman, who then elucidates their identities. The elderly, bald man refers to her as an old witch and expresses immense satisfaction at finally locating the sorceress. At this point, however, our hero remains bewildered by the identities of these individuals and their purpose there. In essence, they constitute a faction consistently at odds with her. To exacerbate the situation, she admits to having castrated that scoundrel. Upon hearing this revolting revelation, the young man suddenly sprang up, nearly choking. Puffing themselves up, the Avenger-like team stands poised for an assault. The bald individual now appears more hostile than previously, prepared to deliver a blow. However, our sorceress does not silently endure these affronts and proceeds to further inflame the man's fury. It seems he will not desist until he has eliminated the Scorpion Sorceress, a task he is fully committed to. Summoning her verdant energy, the woman unleashes a potent incantation in full view of all. To amplify her strength, she concurrently dispels the hex previously placed upon the 2 boys. Gathering all her might, the woman confronts everyone and directs her formidable magic towards her adversaries. This power was so immense it nearly manifested as a terrifying greenish dragon. What she had not anticipated, however, was that the friends also possessed a degree of power, and the individual wielding a bat smirked. Confronting the formidable witch's magic, the bat wielder lifted his weapon to shield his companions. In that instant, the sorcerers fell silent, as their spell should have taken immediate effect, yet he merely retorted with laughter. Concurrently, the aged bald man persisted in hurling menaces and slurs at the scorpion woman. Events were, quite literally, not unfolding as she had anticipated. Maintaining their offensive, one of the youngsters unleashed a vast cloud of cosmic dust. His offensive capability was immense, propelling the sorceress's body across the chamber as if it were a mere piece of paper. Upon the old man's directive to engage, their combined strength converged before the sorcerers to execute a devastating strike. Nevertheless, before they could complete their assault, a volley of gunshots was directed at them. It was our beloved Tao, who, prior to their movement, ensured his weapon was discharged upon them. Furthermore, Changting also entered the fray, even remarking that the scorpion woman would be indebted to him for a specific favor subsequently. At this juncture, the team experiences a degree of desperation, uncertain of their survival against the D's onslaught. Without hesitation, the gang's leader announced it was time to strike. Aware of their potential escape, the scorpion woman urged the boys to halt them. Nonetheless, the cursed gang possessed knowledge of a particular magical art. Before they could react, those scoundrels swiftly and forcefully fled the scene. However, in that moment, the sorceress became utterly enraged, as the pair had allowed their escape. Taking a profound breath, the sorceress admits that the entire debacle was her responsibility. Yet, a sense of relief washed over her, knowing that the two selected to join the celestial team remained alive. At this point, with a mischievous glint in his eye, our protagonist inquires if she is open to hearing a proposition. Grinning instantly, she asks if he is implying that she should become a part of their group. Offering his hand, our hero smiles, affirming that his offer is precisely as she interpreted. Her surprise at the swift response was so profound she could barely process what she heard. Consistently interpreting things suggestively, she queries if they have developed an interest in her. Observing her improved condition, he inquired if she remained wounded. Nonetheless, Tiao is already weary of the sorceress's risque humor. She, however, smiles at him, remarking that it's simply natural for an attractive woman to captivate men. Departing in a seductive fashion, she advises them to contemplate her proposition. It appears our protagonist can now, at last, dedicate their full attention to establishing their own faction. A thorough stretch is in order, particularly following such an arduous battle. Recognizing his need for respite, Tiao inquires about the remaining time until the emergence of the next adversaries. Elsewhere, our characters seem to have made their way back to the sprawling metropolis. Navigating through the bustling throng, Tiao appears to draw attention to a colossal structure with a pointed finger. A colossal edifice captures the young man's gaze, prompting him to urge his friend to observe it. Deliberating thoughtfully on his companion's suggestion, our hero pauses for contemplation. Shortly thereafter, Tiao nudges Changting towards the massive concrete structure. Evidently, he possesses a strong desire to explore its interior. Upon reaching the police-filled location, they observe numerous young individuals within the hallways. Before they can utter a word, an unexpected encounter takes them by surprise. A remarkably elegant man materializes, inquiring if their presence is for registration purposes. With an uneasy grin, Ting asks if the inquiry pertains to their special capabilities. It seems exceptional powers are not a prerequisite for involvement. Indeed, such abilities can be cultivated. With a slight bow, the elegant man introduces himself as Kiwan, declaring his responsibility for Zone 6. The name resonates deeply with our courageous protagonist. Deliberately removing his glasses, the man observes Changting's instant astonishment. Attempting to conceal his reaction, the young man states that the name simply reminds him of an acquaintance. According to the text Ting is reading, while many individuals possess significant talents, one character among them harbored ambitions to subjugate all other ability users. This entity was known as Kiwan, and he would play a paramount role during the apocalypse. Early in the narrative, this man held considerable influence, but as the story progressed, he established a faction. Initially, this individual presented minimal danger, but with the passage of time, his nature transformed, rendering him exceedingly perilous. Yet, the most startling aspect of his saga was the opening of the Great Portal number 6. By the conclusion of the chapter featuring this man, he was depicted as emerging triumphant. However, that triumph merely marked the authentic onset of the downfall.